Hi there, folks. Welcome back to This Week in WordPress and SaaS. It's episode 683. We've got a returning guest, a really fantastic guest, and built up a fantastic business. We've got Akshat with us. I probably butchered his first name. I'm not going to attempt his third name because I'm going to butcher the whole thing. But Tribe, you're used to that, and so is my friend and co-host John Locke. Like I say, Akshat is the founder of BlogVault, MalCare, and WP Remote. All fantastic plugins and services, which I use myself, and I am a paying customer. So Akshat will have to be nice to me, won't he? First of all, I'm going to let my co-host introduce himself. John, can you introduce yourself to the tribe?
Yeah, John from Lockdown SEO, and yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. And Akshat, can you give the tribe a quick intro about yourself? A quick 10, 20-second intro.
Hi, John and Jonathan. Nice to be back. Thank you for having me. I'm the founder, as Jonathan described, I'm the founder of BlogVault and some of the other products. Been here in the WordPress community, and I was almost going to say ecosystem, and then I realized that community describes it so much better. The WordPress community for over 12 years now, and yeah, it's been an amazing journey. We think that we are only getting started. There's so much more to do and so much more to be part of. So yes, excited to be here.
That's fantastic, Akshat. I just want to say I think Akshat is one of the most interesting WordPress entrepreneurs. Really, really bright, but humble at the same time. So that's a really amazing combination, really. Before we go into the main part of this great interview, I've got a message from our major sponsor, Castos. We will be back in a few moments. We're coming back. I just want to point out that Castos has got a fantastic special offer for the tribe, plus some of the other sponsors. Plus, I've got a list of the best plugins and WordPress services all on one page. Fantastic resource. To get all of this, all you have to do is go to the WP-Tonic /recommendations and you'll find the special offers and everything else on that page. So let's go straight into the interview. So maybe you, I watched some of your other recent interviews, and it's just, and it's on the artwork that BlogVault started by a mistake, basically. Maybe you can give a quick outline of why you started BlogVault and just a quick intro to the background of the company.
All right. So yes, it's I was a complete WordPress outsider. In fact, in many ways, I still consider myself an outsider even now. But at that point of time, I barely knew about the existence of WordPress. So what had happened was one of these bloggers who's very famous. He runs this blog called Coding Horror. So he's also the founder of Stack Overflow, and his blog had crashed. And I was like, if this guy can lose his website, and fortunately I was able to recover it through some mechanisms, but because the server had crashed, I was like, okay, maybe there is a need to save blogs, and which is why the name is BlogVault. In hindsight, like looking back, I would not, like knowing today who our customers typically are, I would not have called it BlogVault, because WordPress is so much more than blogs. And in fact, a very, very small number of our customers, as a percentage, would be bloggers. It's a lot more business websites who use our services today. So yes, so that's how we started BlogVault. And we're like, okay, fine, what software is this person using? And they're like, okay, there's this thing called WordPress. And yes, this is how WordPress runs. And we started BlogVault, and then we realized the one thing we did at that time was we realized that we want to make it as a SaaS. And if you go back to early 2010, 11 timeframe, the concept of SaaS was not there. In fact, we thought that fine, you require the only way to do backups is to do it like on another server. You don't want to go through these hassles of doing it. And then we because we thought that's the better way of solving the solution of solving the problem, we took that approach. And I think in hindsight that has turned out to be a really, really good thing. And it has really set the direction for the company. So it was not like we wanted to create a SaaS company or anything of that kind. It just happened that we thought this is the best way of solving the problem. And it led to a number of other decisions that got made. It also meant that we ended up being almost like, if you go back to that time, there was nobody doing SaaS, nobody charging you on a recurring basis. So we got a lot of resistance from potential customers because they would be like, why should I pay recurring? Everything is one-time payment and very small amount of money, whereas we were charging a decent bit. So there was quite a bit of pushback from the customers. And frankly, it was a side job, so side gig. I was working as an engineer, so I didn't care too much. So I like, fine, let it run if I get few customers. But you know what happened? Suddenly I started getting more and more customers, and I was like, okay, fine, what's happening? And people started paying, and before I knew it, the amount of money became substantial. So I was like, maybe there is more to it, and that's when I quit and started doing it full time.
Right. And I think just a follow through question before I throw it over to John is that I think in a couple of the interviews that I listened to, when it came to MalCare was you admitted that maybe you should have concentrated on BlogVault, but you got engrossed in a customer's problem, and it was a difficult problem that took over a year to really solve to your satisfaction. And that turned into MalCare. It's a fascinating. Is that true? Is that correct?
Yeah, no, it's actually it took almost 3 years to build. And and you know, like if I had investors, they would have shot me by now. Like by then, like they're like, first of all, you're making a stupid decision because we barely scratched the surface with the BlogVault market. And then we are getting distracted into building a completely different product where we were not even doing a good enough job of selling the first product.
Yeah, I think you said in that interview, the main thing that saved you is that you always try and produce top quality. And I think you feel always trying to produce the best that you can, that your team can do. Is one of the things that in the end has really worked out for you. Is that correct?
Yes, and again, so you know, and this is not everything is by design. Some of it is just our learnings. But we've always been like, one of the things that we call whenever like a new person joins, so we tell them that we're like jackhammer. You know, we will keep solving the problem. We'll keep coming back at the problem until we are really, really happy with it. And even then, if we find a better ways, and even today, so for example, we still improve our backups. So we'll just keep coming back and solving these problems really, really well. Because when you do that, then you just create a market for yourself. Even if your other shortcomings like lack of marketing the great product takes care of it. And great products don't get built overnight, at least the kind of products we are building. They require that almost maniacal sense of focus.
Yeah, over to you, John.
One thing that I use BlogVault for a lot is migrating sites. And I noticed that today in the WordPress repo, you'll see that there's a ton of plugins that are for migrating sites to specific hosts. How much of that played a role in the growth of the company? Was that a turning point?
So it's an interesting one. So what we started doing backups, and then lot of our customers came back and told us that you should do migration. Migration is a real problem. And it took me 3 years to realize that migration is a real problem, right? And then I bumped into the founder of WP Engine. And this was still like early days. Now WP Engine is this massive thing. It was still big, but it was not as massive as it is today. Far from it. And I bumped into him and I told him that in a podcast that I was listening to, where he was a guest, he mentioned that people would sign up for WP Engine and the biggest problem they would have is they would be unable to migrate their website. And I was like, this is the problem we solve really well. And that became the genesis of our partnership with WP Engine, which led to all the other partnerships. In terms of, so this gave BlogVault a lot of credibility, because now we had like the biggest WordPress companies endorsing our technology. So what we noticed is that a lot of larger agencies and other companies, they started realizing that, okay, fine, if they would use BlogVault or our plugin to migrate their websites to WP Engine, and they would notice our brand. And because they noticed the brand, they would be like, what is this? And that eventually, it took a long time, but it started adding to that credibility. And we started getting more and more customers because of this. So even today, a large number of people recognize BlogVault from the migrations they have done to these hosting companies.
That's excellent. Now, I noticed that you have another product, WP Remote, that allows people to manage is almost as many websites as they want to. Can you go into that product a little bit?
All right. So we have BlogVault and we have MalCare. So BlogVault is a backup product. MalCare is a security product. But if you're using BlogVault for backups, and if you have multiple websites, most likely you're an agency. Now, as an agency, you're doing these backups, but you have a lot more things that you need to accomplish. You want to do things up there. You want to keep them updated. So our customers would tell us that we need to update our websites and stuff like that, and then they would leave us for some of our competitors because we didn't have that functionality. So we started building it into BlogVault, but we also face this other challenge in which we are in the process of solving, is our people would come to BlogVault and the branding would just go haywire. Are we a backup product or are we a product for agencies? So what we said is that, okay, fine, we'll use the same technology and everything else, but brand it for agencies under WP Remote brand. Okay, and so if you are an agency and you're managing multiple websites, then you get all the technology. You get backup, security, updates, monitoring, and everything else that we are doing, tailor-made, packaged for you under the WP Remote brand. And that's, so as an agency owner, that's where you would typically go to. So it's more of a branding, positioning thing than anything else.
All right, then. I think we'll go for our break. We're coming back. Got some more excellent questions, or hopefully they're excellent. I think it's been a great discussion already. We'll be back in a few moments. We're coming back. We've had a great discussion about all things backup plugins, MalCare, WP Remote. But if you want to get the WP-Tonic weekly newsletter with the leading WordPress stories and a personal editorial written by myself, all you have to do is go over to WP-Tonic/newsletter and you can sign up for this free weekly newsletter, like I say, that's got some of the best news stories of the week around WordPress, and also has a great editorial from me. So I think one of the things, and I think you've, like I say, you've touched upon this, is that I have a mixture of small entrepreneurs trying to build a business in e-learning, but I also have some large clients, corporate clients, and they have their IT departments, this is a generality, but it's based on experience, have a very negative attitude in general towards WordPress. They say it's unsecure, it doesn't meet their internal standards, blah, blah, blah. And I think it's a total misconception about open source software where you have multiple eyes looking at the code. I think, which is great, but I think one of the problems maybe are the plugins, which is one of the things that makes WordPress very attractive. So what's your own thoughts about how WordPress is seen, and how unsecure is it, or what are some of the problems, or is it overblown? I thought you're the top expert to really ask this question.
We are fairly opinionated about this space and this topic, right? Like you mentioned, plugins. Plugins are the single biggest reason why sites get hacked today. By far, I think vulnerable plugins, 90 to 95% of sites get hacked because of vulnerable plugins, maybe themes. Plugins even more so. And like you mentioned, WordPress itself has a lot of people looking at it. So we have not had a major WordPress vulnerability for years. But at the same time, plugins, only a handful of people work on it. Often you'll also often see that plugins with millions of installs having only a person working on it part-time. And if just the nature of it means that there is going to be, it's not going to be as foolproof as you'd like. And then you're talking about plugins which have, which are solving a small problem, a niche problem, which will, which does not get the effort or the security analysis going in on a regular basis. And when this happens, your sites using these plugins will be vulnerable. Now today, one of the biggest reasons you are using WordPress is because of the flexibility, because of all these plugins. So net, the answer is WordPress. Most WordPress installs tend to be are always risky. Now, there's always a sense of risk associated with them, and you cannot wish that away. You can say that no, WordPress is safe, but the plugin. The reason vast majority of people are using WordPress is for this reason. So you can't, it's a it just leads to the reality is that most WordPress sites you have to accept that there is a possibility of a hack. Okay, now comes the possibility. How do you mitigate it, especially if you have an IT department? So that means that you most likely have a valuable website, and you can't afford to have it, get hacked, or there are people's necks are on the line, jobs are on the line if this happens, and there's serious material impact. Now, this is the second part which makes it even more insecure is the level of information out there, or should I call it misinformation out there when it comes to how to secure a website is so high, and not maliciously so. A lot of people strongly believe those are good ways of securing websites, and that gets peddled so much. There's also a lot of fear mongering happening of a different kind. So, because of all of these reasons, WordPress sites tend to be a lot more insecure. Let me tell you this, like, you know how we mentioned like plugins is cause of 90% of hacks. But if you went to a person whose site get hacked, or they'll be like, no, my web host is the reason I got hacked. Where web host is rarely the reason. Like, web host can play a role in securing your website, but web host is not the reason your site got hacked. It got hacked because you're using a plugin. And now that tells you the way people think and the way people approach security of their website. And then all of this cascades into basically a lot more sites getting hacked than they should be.
Right. So what are So I gather from what you've just said is the reality is the duality, the biggest security vector is the plugins. But you also said that it's the understanding of how to set up a WordPress website, and how, if you really understand it and do it the right way, some of these problems are reduced greatly. That's the impression I was getting from what you were saying. Can you give a quick outline of what some of the key things that you think people need to understand when they're setting up a WordPress website that will make it more secure?
All right. So I think the most important thing you should have is a firewall. And a firewall, there are different types of firewall. Like a web application firewall is what you should get. Personally, I believe that's the single biggest reason why a whole set of attacks can get blocked. Okay. Like in case you are using WordFence actually has a great firewall. People don't give it credit for that. Our own plugin also, we are building a great firewall. We already have it. But I'm saying that's another one. But focus on a firewall. There are a lot of other noisy things out there trying to make you do stuff with the login protection, which only plays a very much smaller role. So a great firewall is number one. Number two is keep things updated. That I'm sure, like that we have heard a million times. So keep things updated. And third, if feasible, try and use more some of the more popular plugins with a bigger team behind them. Because as the bigger team, what has happened is, as WordPress has become more commercial and plugins businesses have actually become more realistic businesses, people are able to put in a lot more investments with resources behind them. So those plugins and themes tend to be a lot more secure. So like something like and actually shouldn't take names there because there's no such thing as full code security, but some of the larger teams are more likely to have better practices when it comes to security than the smaller teams. It's not like a 100% rule, but those are the three factors I would say. Having said this, we use plugins which have like a few thousand installs all the time. Because when my marketing team wants to solve a problem, they're like, I need to solve this problem because money is on the line. So they are not going to look helter-skelter, or they are not going to figure out like which is the most secure plugin.
Yeah,
so there are.
I think you're totally correct there. But I think when you're dealing with a corporate website, especially if they're in the medical or the financial or in some regulatory environment, external, they got rightful concerns. But I think one of those is really being very fussy about, having a stable platform, not allowing everybody in the organization to be able to install whatever they want to, having only a small group of plugins installed, having a stable environment, having somebody in charge that won't allow anything else to be installed unless it's been checked over, and being fussy about where these plugins come from. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. You like every word of you have said there is like as accurate as it gets. With this critical environment, you need teams to be, you need people to be really, really fussy and gatekeepers essentially.
Right. Over to you, John.
No, BlogVault is a very successful company. But are there any business challenges that you've encountered over the last year? That what things do you struggle with behind the scenes?
All right. So I think last year has been a challenge. The elephant in the room is obviously there with COVID and stuff. But keeping that aside, so one of the challenges was over the past 2 years we had most of the time our company was remote. And most WordPress companies tend to be remote. What we have come to realize in the past couple of years is we cannot be a remote company. So it's been counter. So we're like, okay, fine, remote does not work for us. There are parts of it we can do remotely, but most of it we like to be in person. We like to do things together. We like to solve problems in this way. And we have also diagnosed the reasons behind it, like the level of maturity in the team you require, the level of communication you require. We're not there yet, and obviously the temperament, etc. So all of those factors mean that we like to be in a room. We have seen that we have some things which used to take weeks often get solved within hours when you are just talking against a whiteboard. And some of the it also deals with that kind of problems we are trying to solve. So we also like to take up some of the more complex technology problems and try and really keep coming back at it. So those things are non-trivial, and it's good to have people in a room brainstorming and coming up with different solutions before we zero in on one. So these are factors, and that has set the agenda for the rest of the company for at least a decent amount of future, where we know this big thing which is going on is not for us.
Yeah, as we have to discuss that in the bonus content, because that was a fantastic, you just opened a fantastic, interesting subject there about how you cope with a remote team and in-house and the benefits and non-benefits of both. That's fascinating in itself. We're going to wrap up the podcast part of the show, folks. We're going to continue the discussion. You'll be able to watch the whole show on the WP-Tonic YouTube channel, plus the extra conversation that we're going to be having in a few minutes. Just go over to YouTube, put WP-Tonic in, and please subscribe and support the show on YouTube as well. So, John, what's the best way for people to find out more about you and what you're up to, John?
You can go to my website, Lockdown SEO, or YouTube channel, same thing. I'm Lockdown SEO everywhere. So
yeah, John's got a fantastic channel where he's got a fantastic practical insights around SEO. He gets to the point quick and it's relevant, and he's not trying to pitch anything, and I've learned a lot from John, so I recommend that. Akshat, how can people find out more about you, your company, and really some fantastic products?
All right, so head over to BlogVault or WP Remote. Those are the two products. Also MalCare, so malcare.com, wpremote.com, or blogvault.net. Those are the places where you can see about the products. Personally, I'm not a very social person, so you'll rarely see me tweeting or.
You seem quite chatty. You seem quite chatty to me. You seem.
Yeah, no. Yeah. So, and to the really, my team really gets annoyed with it. But the personality is the personality, and so I'm not a very social person. So you don't see me being very active on any of these social media.
Well, you're always welcome to come back. You have to come back a little bit sooner than last time, because it's been a fascinating conversation. Like I say, we'll be continue the discussion, and you'll be able to watch it all on the WP-Tonic YouTube channel. Go over there and subscribe. We'll see you next week, folks, for another great interview. We'll see you soon. Bye. So, bonus content. I thought it was really fascinating, your last answer to John's question. I personally, because WP-Tonic's in the education, we host and we use your product as part of our hosting package, and we offer support, but it's aimed at the individual organization that wants to make money from e-learning or wants a training platform on WordPress, right? So I think when it comes to education, some people say you need children in the classroom to really educate them. Then other people say, well, some students do better remotely. I think the answer really is a hybrid where you have a combination of both. What would you be your response to what I've just said?
It's interesting that you are mentioning this, and the reason why I bring it up is I have a young daughter, and we're trying to put her into school. And while we know that immediately in the near future, school is going to be important, physical schools, we're looking 15 years out, 10 years out, what does school look like? And there are discussions like that we are having. So it's slightly unrelated to the kind of, a lot of e-learning courses, but this topic that you're discussing is will be affecting lives that we have led so far at multiple levels, actually at every level. Now, given that background, I personally think that college as we know it will cease to exist in a few years, because educational content, just the quality will keep improving. It just will become like, how, at least the way I look at it is, eventually it will become like really well-produced movies, and where things will just be of such high fidelity with such great, that for teacher in place will just not be able to match up to that, at least from a teaching perspective, just putting out information perspective, right? But there are other aspects to it. The social aspects of learning, I think those are going to be valuable. But that mixture, that balance where we hit, I'm not really sure. That's anybody's guess. But I think it's tending towards a lot more e-learning, in my opinion. Like there is a lot of the higher value, bigger value thing will get captured by some form of e-learning. It is inevitable.
Yeah, it's a fascinating area, really, because I've kind of said this, John. I've said this in front of John a few times about this organisation in the UK that was started in the early 60s, and it's called the Open University. And I really see this applying to business organisations where I think there is a necessity for face-to-face meetings, because I think it's a necessity to kind of build some kind of company culture, which I think is very difficult to ingrain just solely by seeing people online. But on the other hand, making people commute hours you're limiting the talent pool that you can attract to your company, and also making people travel every day into a centralized office is really a total waste of time and energy, right? Which could be spent on having a better personal life and doing better work, basically. The way I see this working is having satellite offices where people can come in like once a month, and then maybe every quarter they go to a larger meeting of all the different little satellite offices, like little co-working satellite for a smaller company, you could have quarterly meetings where people travel in. That's how I see things developing. What's your feeling about that?
There are all these companies which are really successful at it, and every point that you mentioned is true to them. Personally, it just doesn't work for me. Like I'm not disagreeing with anything that you have said. I think all of it is true, but the in-person conversations are just so powerful. We were human beings. We work at like so many levels, and written communication is like the worst way to communicate emotions, and almost always misinterpreted. And even in a office environment, there is emotions happening. People are interpreting actually everything that is being said, And when it is when the fidelity is so poor, then it just leads to problems and misunderstandings. And obviously, you can, if you have a mature organization and if you have a certain level of maturity, you can deal with it. When the level of communication is really good, you can deal with it. When the level of documentation is really good, you can deal with it. But in the absence of those, and which I think a lot of organizations, including mine, suffer from, in that case, uh, having an in-person office works. Now, obviously, you don't expect like for us, people who stay whenever we're interviewing someone and they're staying 12 miles, 15 miles away, we're like, no, it's not going to work out. That person, when they're staying 15 miles away, it's not going to work out. And we are actually very, very flexible as to how often you can come to office. But when the rest of the team is in office, then it's not going to work out. And we have seen that happen. So it limits us, but we also know that it's a choice we have to make.
Yeah. So, John, what's your thoughts about this? And have you got another question, John?
Oh no, I kind of agree that if you have a company, like everybody has to be remote or everybody's in the office, because if you split it, then the people in the office are gonna be like, well, why does that person get to be remote? And it just, but I understand what you're saying. Have for BlogVault, having the people in the office, it solves the problems faster. The chemistry and the brain power is solving those problems with speed, and speed is of the essence. But I have a question. Speaking of building products, do you have any advice for someone who's getting into the WordPress product economy, trying to build a plugin or another product? What would your advice be to someone starting out?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so, the advice I would give, and something which has taken me a long time to understand, is, if you go into the WordPress repository, almost every idea you can think of is already solved, right? And there's a good chance, and it can be very, very demotivating when you see this brainwave that you have, and then somebody already has done it. But what I would suggest is don't get demotivated, have a long-term view, and understand that there's always a need for people to solve that problem really well. There's always going to be a need around it. And I can give so many examples where if you are patient and if you are committed to solving a problem really, really well, then you can be successful. Now, will you have a lion's share of the market? Will you be a monopoly? Possibly not. But you can still be an extremely successful business. And I can give so many examples around it in the recent past. It's not easy, but patience will solve for a lot of those problems.
Would you say that what would you say is more important? Is it marketing, or like having a different, solving the problem but in a different way, or is it a mixture of both?
So the reality is, with marketing being a weak point, I would say, yeah, marketing is very, very important. But then I also end up spending a lot more time on the product. So I don't follow that advice myself. I still feel, while you keep seeing this question is asked so many times, and so many people will say marketing is more important than anything else because distribution trumps everything. And I think distribution trumps everything if you have a short horizon. But if you're looking at long enough time span, then quality product coupled with a decent amount of marketing will work. If you start off like BlogVault, where you didn't care what marketing was happening, what was happening, then you're not going to be successful. You need to put in some effort into marketing. But having a long view solves so many problems, which, a lot of advice today is like get rich quick, or become $1 billion company. And if you don't have that, like the good thing, the one thing I do know is that I'm not aiming to be $1 billion company. And as soon as you make that decision, the choices you make is completely different.
I've got one last question. I think listening, to a couple of your previous interviews, one of the things was when you were having, it didn't happen straight away, when you had those meetings with the founder of WP Engine. I think you said that you met him once. I think it was at San Francisco 2014. I was actually there myself, actually. And I think you had a conversation and he said, yeah, he was really interested, but nothing happened. And then you had another, you bumped into him again, nothing happened. And then it was an actual client that kind of really got, but I think you were saying that business partnerships have been really important to you. And it's been a thing that I haven't really spent a lot of time on myself when it comes to WP Engine. And over the past, listening to your previous interviews, I think I'm really going to have to spend more effort and time trying to build some business partnerships. How I get the impression it's been really important to your own company building these relationships. And if that's correct, have you got any advice about other people about how they should approach it?
So don't do things that I did, for sure. Business and the first learning is, and you can't have like a thin skin. So I would email. So I met Jason Cohen, whom I admire greatly. Yeah. I admire him even before I started BlogVault.
Yeah, I'm the same. I've been trying to get him on my podcast, but with little success, unfortunately.
I wish I could help, but I don't think that's going to work. But yeah, he's fantastic, and I'm very fortunate to have had a few conversations with him. Right. So yes, I reached out to him. I met him in San Francisco, and we're like, oh yeah, this makes sense. And then I emailed him. I heard back from him, and then I emailed him again, and I think I didn't hear back. And then for a whole year, I did not mail him again. And you can't. That's just wrong, because business. He was really busy. WP Engine was scaling left, right, and center. It was just skyrocketing. So you just need. And he's like, "Why didn't you mail me?" And this is a lesson I just didn't learn, because there are so many other instances when I made this mistake. You just need to keep following up. And if you have a thin skin like myself, it doesn't work. You need to follow up, because not that people are obviously, sometimes people just don't want. They are unwilling to say no. But many a times, just we get caught up with 50 other problems that we are solving as running a business, or at that time when your mail came in, it was not the right time. So I think following up makes sense. The second thing is, sometimes the other business, one is following up, the other one business also has to be in the right place. So over time, I think it came in with the right place, and then you also need to ask, why is it not working? And for us, we got extremely lucky, where a customer of ours put in the word. The CEO of WP Engine was visiting this customer of ours, and she's like, "You have to work with Akshat," and it just, that's how lucky we got. But that's not going to happen with everyone, right? So in this case, how do you build that credibility? Some of those things have to be thoughtful, but these partnerships work. And actually, each of these partnerships, each of these relationships, they just add to the overall, they add to the momentum of the flywheel. And that's the best way to put it.
Yeah, the flywheel, I think that's a great metaphor, because a lot, trying to get the ball rolling, a lot of people just don't realize. John knows that I have some weaknesses, to say the least, but one of my strengths, isn't it, John, is I don't normally give up, do I?
Yeah, persistence is key. And it definitely sounds like that's something that we all believe in. So
I think we're gonna wrap it up now. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I think it's been a really fantastic discussion. I've really enjoyed it. Like I say, Tribe, we'll be back next week with another great guest. Actually, I've got some really, really impressive guests like Akshat coming on the show. I think recently we've had some fantastic interviews. Thank you, John, for being my co-host this week. It's much appreciated. We'll see you soon, folks. Bye.
Thank you.